Sekeres and Price for Friday, February 7th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the Historic Wall Center. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside Jeff Paterson sitting in for Blake today. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things. Rink-wide's Jeff Paterson. You managed to stay awake last night watching. Late start, not a lot happening.
You're going to make me talk about this for a second time. That's my punishment in all of this. But yes, we did manage. It picked up at the end, obviously.
Yeah, it did.
But my goodness, yes, for 40 minutes. Oof.
I don't think we'll comb through the nitty-gritties much on this one, Jeff. Not that there were many.
Pick up at the penalty shot?
That's right. Not that there were many nitties nor gritties at the Shark Tank in San Jose. And just before we get going, I was communicating with a friend of ours, a Vancouver guy who's been down in the Bay Area for a number of years. He was at the game. Looking at that building last night, how empty it was, how very little noise or energy or enthusiasm was around a very drab game.
You weren't down for the violin anthems to start. Did you see the announced attendance?
What was it?
11,509.
Yeah.
That's the announced attendance.
So this aforementioned friend sent me a screenshot of tickets on the resale market there, Jeff, to sit in the lower bowl, upper lower bowl. So a really nice view above the glass, right on the blue line. The resale value, $9 a ticket. $9 to sit in the lower bowl. They got a long way to go. They've got a long, long way to go. And Macklin Celebrini is not yet selling tickets for the San Jose Sharks. Okay, Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today. What was the best part of the Canucks week? Back on a playoff spot. They are just that after getting the victory, coupled with the Calgary loss to Colorado. The newcomers, and they strike again last night. Drew O'Connor with the penalty shot in overtime to win. Thatcher Demko's performance, and there have been a couple of virtuosos here this week, or the end of the drama. I almost wanted to put a question mark there because with this team and this franchise, who knows? But what says you, Jeff? What do you take away from this week in Canucks land?
I think it has to be Thatcher Demko. I mean, if I go off the board, I would just say the excitement of Tuesday's win against Colorado and the feel in the building that's been missing for so much of the season in isolation, that was incredible. And it was great to see, and let's hope that there is more of that down the stretch. And Demko was a huge part of it. So if I'm looking at my options there, Thatcher Demko shutout on Tuesday and then backing it up. He was really good against the Sharks, and I know the Sharks are dead last in the NHL, but they also outshot the Canucks 16-3, Matt, in the final period as the Canucks tried to park the bus unsuccessfully. And the last two games against San Jose, the Canucks have beaten the Sharks all three times this year, all by one goal. The last two times, the game before Christmas and last night, third period shots, 13-4 and 16-3.
That's right.
In favor of San Jose.
I remember that game before Christmas. I'm with you. I voted Demko as well. Look, I can see the case for back on a playoff spot because that's the upshot here, right? Mm-hmm. That's the end game. The newcomers and the way Tocchet has talked about what they have brought to the room, and we'll get into a little bit of that as the show goes along here, have been just manna from heaven. Like, we did a show title earlier this week, The Joy is Back, Jeff.
Yeah.
There was not a whole lot of joy here in Mudville for a while as the Canucks were sifting through this JT Miller, Elias Pettersson matter. And just so inconsistent in their play, not to mention, quite dreary in their play as well. End of the drama, question mark. Elias is still struggling. We'll get into that. But I can see cases across the board here. Our friends at Surrey Mitsubishi have extended an exclusive offer for the Sekeres Price audience. If you've been turned down for financing at other dealerships, Surrey Mitsubishi has dedicated a representative, Jessica. She's going to help you get approved through their in-house financing program. Bad credit, negative equity on your current car. Jessica's going to apply the special program, do everything possible to make sure you're approved. Email Jessica at surreymitsubishi.com. Jessica at surreymitsubishi.com. Make sure you mention Sekeres Price to get in on this offer. Some conditions apply. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue. As we get into our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Thatch is back as the Canucks beat the Sharks 2-1 on an overtime penalty shot from Drew O'Connor, the rare overtime penalty shot.
Pretty weak call, I thought.
I thought it was the softest penalty shot I've seen in I don't know how long. I was waiting for the replay because I'm like, I must have missed something there. And then the replay comes back, and I go, okay, well, that's a hook, but he still kind of had an attempt on goal.
Yeah, I think that's the case. The ref gets one look in real time and maybe saw more than was actually there. I know the Sharks were upset about it. Fans, the few that were there, they were upset about it. But
non-reviewable, right?
No, and in a game that lacked some excitement, like I'm all for the penalty shot ending and giving up a single point to the Sharks. That doesn't ultimately matter to the Vancouver Canucks. But yeah, I think Celebrini on the back check. He was waving the stick in there, but I don't know. I think you got to give a guy a little bit of leeway on the back check.
Yeah, I mean, penalty is punitive enough in overtime, right?
Well, and this begs the question, too, about, should the team have the option? If he doesn't score, this is probably a debate today about, penalty shot versus 2 minutes of 4-on-3. They point to center ice, or the ref points to center ice, and look, Drew O'Connor looked like a finisher. He also looked like JT Miller weaving off to the side.
Absolutely.
JT left his playbook behind in his stall or something when he moved on.
Hey, a big left shot American forward? No, there were a lot of similarities there. So are you talking as at all times, an option for a team, penalty shot or take the 2 minutes?
I think it's one of those sort of rainy day things that's kind of fun to kick around. I mean, we're never going to get there, but...
You don't think so? You don't see a day?
I don't see a day. No.
God, that would add some fun.
It would. And a little bit of strategy, perhaps. If it's your best player and...
For sure.
If it's Draisaitl or William Nylander and he gets a penalty shot, maybe you take your chances there.
I
but
think so.
A lesser team... or
a lesser player, and maybe you take your 2.
5-on-4 is different than 4-on-3.
4-on-3 should be... you should make more hay 4-on-3.
Though if it was the Canucks, they may have just spent 2 minutes passing it around the outside and nobody wanting to shoot the puck.
Nobody moving their feet either.
Nobody moving their feet, no.
Demko with 33 saves. Your tweet here, a 3-1 record in his last 4, a 1.25 goals against, a .952 save percentage, 100 saves on 105 shots, including a shutout. Let's hear from head coach Rick Tocchet after another strong outing from Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, I think the last 3-4 weeks, just in practice, the games he's played, he's getting some traction on him. He's playing really well for us. He's a world-class goalie. He's played a lot of great hockey games for the Vancouver Canucks. So I've always expected Demmer to play that way. He's that good of a goaltender.
He mentioned several weeks and cited practice.
Yeah, I mean,
interesting.
I think you go back. The run of those 4 games that I mentioned there started in Nashville, and he was really good in Nashville and set a season high with 31 saves. He outdid himself last night. And so I think that's progress and a sign of progression that, the shot volume is up, but he's up to the challenge as well. I think, too, if you sort of scratch beneath the surface a little bit here, there have been like the goal in Dallas, was it Hintz? I think it was, the breakaway goal. That one looked a little too easy. Would like to save there. But I'm sort of splitting hairs because the guy stopped 100 of the last 105. And look at some of the goals, Matt. In Nashville, he makes a save on a 2-on-1 and puck goes in off the Predators' skate in the end. Like, there's not a whole lot he could do there. Last night, off Derek Forbort in the end. Couple of scratchy goals included, and yet the numbers are what they are at a .952 clip over a very short sample size. But yes, I think we're seeing some real signs of progress and things that take us back to last year when he was the Vezina finalist.
Right. Let's bring up your second tweet there. Canucks have allowed 13 goals in their last 7, and 5 of them came in Dallas, so just 8 in the other 6. It was 1 against the Capitals. It was 2 against the Blues. It was 1 against the Predators. It was 3 against Detroit in the overtime loss. Of course, shutout Colorado, and just 1 against San Jose. So only 3 goals or less in each and every one. Mm-hmm. And that should create a lot of winning, and it has. Canucks 5-1-1 in their last 7, back on that playoff spot, that second Western Conference wildcard, as we mentioned, with 1 game remaining. Home game against Toronto tomorrow before the 4 Nations.
Have you looked up as opposed to down, though?
Well, L.A. is leaking oil here.
They've got some games in hand.
They have games in hand on the Canucks, but yes, they're leaking oil. And honestly, Jeff, and I was at the first Colorado Canucks game earlier this season, and in fact, in the end, where Colorado shot twice, and then watching that game on Tuesday, that club is a shell of the Stanley Cup champion from a couple of years ago. They are so without sort of the depth and class that made that team everything it could be. I know they feel they've stabilized goaltending, and okay, great. But it's almost like Makar and McKinnon, and I guess Natchez now, they don't have a ton of playmates there, huh?
Right, and so they're so top-heavy that they didn't produce. They had some moments the other night against the Canucks, but they ultimately were shut out. But you see what they did in Calgary last night. Like, those guys went off and beat the Flames pretty handily. And so...
Well, those guys are going to be the difference on a lot of nights.
Right.
But
you get to a playoff series against equal or better opponents that are deeper through their lineup, and then you absolutely require your top-end guys to win you playoff series. And, I think they can win you games, certainly in a series. Can they win 4 out of 7?
Well, and even before that, Jeff, I would argue they've got 26 left in a tough part of the year, right? Like, this is when all the accumulation of nicks, knocks, all those things add up. When you're a top-heavy team, how are you doing in games 65 through 82 when there are just so many miles already on those best players? The one thing I will say, in Blake's absence, because he always looks at this, they're a plus 11 goal differential. The Canucks are minus 12. Right. So it's a 23-goal difference.
Right. And when I said, are you looking up, I'm looking more at the Kings, because the Canucks are a single point back of the Los Angeles Kings. Kings have 3 in hand. Here's what I would point out to people that think, like, look out, the Canucks are going to reel in the Kings. And they might. And they've
won 2 in a row here. They were leaking oil before that.
They played Los Angeles in their third game out of the break. So a big game coming up at Crypto.com. And I mentioned Crypto because the LA Kings have played the fewest home games in the NHL this year by 5. Like, they have so much catching up to do. They started the season on a 7-game road trip. They're 16-3-1 on home ice. So just keep that in mind, that they have been lights out good.
Yep.
But one of those 3, the Vancouver Canucks back in November. A regulation win.
Yeah. And that road trip that you speak of is an odd one, Jeff, because
two sets of back-to-backs.
2 sets of back-to-backs with a 2-day break in between. I can't remember the last time we saw something like that in a Canucks schedule. They have Utah, who have been a dreadful home team, almost as bad, or actually worse now than the Vancouver Canucks. They got Vegas, who, needless to say, have been a tough out on home ice, 19-6-1, and of course Anaheim in the do-si-do of Southern California, and Anaheim.
But by the time they get to Anaheim, I mean, that's back-to-back again in 4 and 6 nights, so that's going to present its own challenges. And
Dakota Joshua scores a power play goal, Jeff. Do you have? I think you were here a couple of weeks ago, and we were almost wondering about writing off this season for Dakota Joshua. Just so much has gone poorly for the big fella. Do you have hopes that can get him going? Do you think the best is yet to come for Dakota Joshua? Because when we go down the list of Canucks who performed sublimely last year and helped float that 109-point Pacific Division championship. He was a big part of it, and you come back this year, and of course his production has been awfully wanting.
Right. So I don't think he can sort of make whole on the season with the amount of time that he's missed. Third goal. You hope every time that he scores that, yes, that's the one that's going to get him going. It had been 11 games. He hadn't scored since the game in Utah before Christmas, and of course missed a little time earlier this month. But big guy, front of the net, nifty hands there on the deflection. So sure, there were some things to like. He had a big hit on Mario Ferraro. Second big hit of the game that Ferraro took. Connor Garland got him early. Probably felt that Dakota Joshua hit a little bit more. But yeah, I guess for me, look, if this team is going to be a playoff team, then is there enough runway here for Dakota Joshua to continue to work his game so that when the playoffs get here, he arrives on the scene? I think that's the hope. Forget, even if it's 6 or 8 goals, the goal total is not going to blow you away this year. He's not going to pick up as the 18-goal scorer he was last year in 63 games. That train is left. But I think there's enough time here for him to just continue to up his game.
That's it.
So that he hits his stride at the right time of the season.
He's obviously not going to get whole, but resemble the player he was last year. Yep. There's definitely enough runway. I also like the way where he's slotted right now with Suter and Sherwood. I think that can be because it's giving me a little bit of vibes from last year's line where the guy on the other flank was Connor Garland last year, of course. Sherwood's had just an awesome season, and the hit totals is just unbelievable game after game. So yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit of hope that we can see the Dakota Joshua from last year, who has been so missing this year, and what that would mean for the Vancouver Canucks. You mentioned the hit he laid, the Connor Garland hit. How about Nils Oman, Jeff?
Yeah, that was a big hit too.
Wow, and it's funny because I think a lot of people were a little. Tocchet was talking so nicely about Linus Karlsson last week. You thought maybe he had something going on that all-Swedish line with Höglander and Pettersson before they got split up. A pretty nifty net front guy who had been is clearly learning the tricks of the trade there. Previous in the season, Tocchet had commended Karlsson for his board work. And you're going, you're demoting him to bring back Nils Oman. Haven't we been down that road? Couple of things. Number one, Nils Oman had played very well in Abbotsford since his last demotion. Also, a guy who can play the middle and can be a rangy penalty killer for you. So it was nice to see Oman lay that hit. Boy, if he can bring an element of physicality in the bottom 6, that could be a ticket for more playing time. And then there's O'Connor. And look, of the 3 guys who came in here, Philip Hedl, obviously, and he's been such a joy to watch this week because you can see it. It is palpable. The young man understands, here's an opportunity to be a second-line center, not a third-line center. Here's an opportunity to play on the power play, and here's an opportunity to play my game and have coach use me as an example of what he's trying to get to. So Hedl has been marvelous, and of course Marcus Pettersson, we're going to talk about him also, and so much so loving his new digs that he signed the big contract extension. But I think it's fair to say that Drew O'Connor was the most sort of affected by this trade, right? He had talked about how Pittsburgh was the only organization he knew, signed there specifically as a college free agent. And then the next thing you know, you're up and moving your life to a different city, a different team, a different country. So I have been very, very impressed with how a guy who's going through this for the first time has been able to play as effectively as he has.
Right. And I think I said on Monday, after I talked to him on Sunday, first media availability, the morning skate, it was an optional skate, and he looked so zoned out. And I asked him about processing the first trade of his career, and he said, I haven't. You could see, he had this vacant stare that, I'm here, but I'm not really here. But he's settled in. And, even the empty netter, and I thought Rick Tocchet made a great point the other night against Colorado, where a lot of guys would have panicked with the puck and just flailed away and sent it down the ice. What's his calling card here? His ticket is his feet and his skating. He moved, he separated himself a little bit and got in a position where he could then put it on the backhand and in the net. And so I liked that. It was a simple play. He had a great scoring chance in the second period. Brock Besser set him in. Didn't convert there, but he had 6 shots on the night. He has looked noticeable. And again, I think when you talk about
like his game.
When you talk about Hedl too, I think both of these guys, they look 15% faster because this team is so slow.
Yes.
So just by the nature of the surroundings that they have come to, it feels like they get a 15% boost in their effectiveness when it comes to moving their feet.
Yeah, and that Pittsburgh trade is growing on me more and more as I watch O'Connor. And Pettersson, we'll get to him in a second. But first, let's hear from the head coach, Rick Tocchet. Here's what he was saying about O'Connor postgame.
Yeah, obviously the speed. He really adds a lot to our team. And that was obviously a big goal for us. But just a real coachable kid. He wants to learn. And I know he's only been here a week, 2 weeks, but he's just a really good coachable kid.
How long of a season has it been, Coach?
Lost track of any concept of time.
He's been here 5 days, Coach, not 2 weeks.
It's felt
like 2 weeks.
The season has felt like 2 years.
That's right. Okay. As Jeff mentioned, we're forcing him to go over this game for a second time. So we're going to leave it here. I thought Adam Kiersonblad had the best synopsis of what we saw. Arguably the worst Canucks game to watch this season ends up having arguably the greatest ending. This team is something else. Well put, Adam. Yellow Dog, the Yellow Dog Spirits mix packs. You can grab not one, but 2 delicious and refreshing mix packs from Yellow Dog Spirits because these are perfect for every season. The Hi There Hard Iced Tea mix pack includes the lemon, peach, raspberry tea, and Freezies vodka soda mix pack. Includes the purple, blue, and white Freezies. Lots of options packed into 2 mix packs. Look for them at government and private liquor stores. Okay, Marcus Pettersson extension. Jeff, our first opportunity to talk to you about that. What do you make of it?
Yeah, like everybody, surprised at how quickly these two sides decided that this was the right fit for both of them. Obviously, the Canucks made the trade, and you can understand after the Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm experiences last year, they couldn't afford to let this guy walk, especially after flipping a first-rounder. But 4 days, I'm not even sure that Elias Pettersson or Marcus Pettersson's had a chance to walk the seawall, Matt, in his new surroundings here. So he was asked a couple of times on the Zoom when they made him available about, how did you know? Obviously some familiarity with the management group. I think that's a big part of it for him. Jim Rutherford has traded for him twice. Jim's talked glowingly about the player and the person here. And quite frankly, given the Zadorov situation last year, the fact that he was a pending UFA, I know AFP Analytics had him down for something in the neighborhood of around 5.8.
Over 5.
I thought, given the leverage that the Pettersson camp had, that they'd be able to bump this to start with a 6, somewhere in the 6s. So to come in at 5.5, that's team friendly to me.
Yep.
And yeah, it's only been 3 games, but he's looked good. I don't know that he was as good last night as he was the Colorado game or even his first game against Detroit, but they've won 2 and they've picked up a single point in the other. So hard to argue with the results there. Seems like a likable guy, fairly big personality for a Swede. They don't all have the big personality, but yeah.
Well, talking about how he's talking during that timeout the other night, he said normally the new guys are pretty quiet in those sorts of environments, but he invested himself readily into that strategy discussion during the timeout late against Colorado. I hear you. He didn't squeeze them. That's a very good point. He could have squeezed them. Was talking with Patrick yesterday. Would like your 2 cents, though. You did have time here. Mm-hmm. You chose not to use it. Again, you have familiarity with the player, so maybe you're wholly convinced that this is going to be hand in glove and the fit is going to be terrific. The early returns have been just that. But also, because he's not a guy who is going to put up a ton of counting stats, was the price going to get much more expensive if this waited till the trade deadline?
No, but I do think there's value in cost certainty, especially if they have things up their sleeve here. Obviously, his new contract doesn't kick in until next year, but if you're acquiring somebody with term and you've got to fit them in on your books,
By the deadline, that's a good point. Yep.
So I
they
think-
wanted that with Elias, right?
Totally. So
need to know what your number is because we'd like to do some other things here.
Yeah, but again, as a pending unrestricted free agent, a top 3 defenseman, 28 years of age, to get him for 6 years, absolutely, I think you can extract value out of this contract over the duration where we always look at how is it going to age. There's not a ton of flash to his game. There's no reason that he can't be this player for all 6 years of the contract. So no issues. I just am surprised on his part that he didn't want to walk around town and see Vancouver on a sunny day and look at the mountains and look at the ocean and think that, yes, this is where I want to be. But he had come to that conclusion already, so he has signed on the dotted line, and I think all around a pretty good deal for the hockey club. And look, he's got 33 million reasons to be all right with it, too.
Yeah. He says he's okay with the nickname Dragon. We slay dragons in that arena.
Got it from a middle school PE coach, apparently.
Do you think it will stick?
Well, yeah, they need some differentiators in that locker room. My goodness. So I was on with Merrick the other day.
I saw that.
And the amount of time and energy you spend now
differentiating
the Pettersons.
Yeah.
It's incredible. You don't even think about it, but every single time you mention one, you have to, the defenseman, the original one, the new guy, whatever. So, yeah, if we can have it.
I think we have it bad. The print guys have it worse.
Yep. No, that's true.
Mm-hmm. Your Canucks Army columns now suddenly become
a few words longer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's hear from Marcus Pettersson. As Jeff covered, he talked about the familiarity with this management group as the reason why he signed or he extended so quickly. He was also asked about which Canucks in the room have made an early impression on him. Take a listen.
There's a lot of guys. I mean, a guy like Mike has been here a long time, been around the league a long time. Talked to him a lot. Obviously, played the first 2 games here with him, and so obviously it comes natural to talk to him as your partner and stuff like that. Other guys, I know Kiefer Sherwood since before. He's a guy that's vocal around the room. Another guy is Connor Garland. Seems like a vocal guy in the room and really a leader here. And then you got Petey and the forward Petey and Brock, obviously, great guys. Obviously, you got Quinn too. So, like I said, it's a lot of great people, young, hungry guys that wants to win every day. So, there's a lot of guys that have made an impression on me. Knew some of the people before too, so that helps too. But there's a lot of guys that I feel like are taking steps in that leadership role, and for sure, Micey being one of them.
We knew Tyler Myers is sort of a conscience of the team, the carrier of coach's message, a guy who can sort of move seamlessly between all corners of the dressing room. But that's the second guy this week to name check Connor Garland as a leader. Did you see Brad Richardson on Missing Curfew with Shane O'Brien, where he called Connor Garland the best leader in that room? I just want to get a sense of what you've seen here from Connor Garland in that room, and particularly now in an environment where JT Miller is not around, whether you see Garland being more of a voice internally and externally for this club.
Yeah, Garland is one of the more vocal guys at practice, and we've heard Rick Tocchet from time to time talk about how this is a pretty quiet group. And take it for what it's worth. I mean, we're talking practice here, but there isn't a ton of exuberance in a lot of the Canuck practices, but Garland's one of those guys who'll whoop it up, and if he scores a nice goal, he lets everybody know about it and celebration and stuff, just like all in fun. But it's like I can sort of understand that. I think if that carries over into the locker room, that I know that he's in the middle of the fantasy football league on that team, and I've heard him giving it to guys about fantasy football at times. So
he's the commissioner of that.
I know he was in the final. I don't know if he ended up winning this year, but he was certainly happy to tell people that he was in the final. I should have got an update.
Yes.
But just those types of things. But some of those things that bring some levity, right? And just kind of ground a group if tension is high. I I can see some of the personality
too.
of Connor Garland sort of coming through.
Yeah, I sort of felt like there were a number of guys there who existed in JT's shadow, and I wonder if he steps a little further into the spotlight now that Miller is with the Rangers. Okay, well, we're half an hour into the show, Jeff, so
There we go.
have got to talk about Elias Pettersson. Pointless in 3 now after zeros yesterday. I saw the Bachelor tweet. He's on pace for 17 goals and 52 points. Patrick Alvin was on 650 yesterday, and on Pettersson, he says, with regards to whether he's next or whether they're looking to move him, he said, no, we all know what he's capable of doing and has done in the past. We have all the resources on our staff to help him. He's definitely being humble and expressed that he's willing to do it. The choice of words, resources on our staff, and being humble, interesting.
After how many mentions of safe environment?
Safe environment.
Yeah. I mean, connect the dots. It feels like we're peeling back some layers here.
I
as we
think
go.
so. The other thing I'll say is that Elias has been known as a little bit of a loner, tough to reach, kind of just wants to go about business his own ways. I think he has been difficult on the coaches, and there have been 3 of them here, Tocchet, Boudreau, and Travis Green, in terms of, okay, how do I get to him? How do I motivate him? This, that, and the other thing. So that Alvin name checks resources on the staff. But it also sounds like they've had a conversation with him. He's definitely being humble and expressed that he's willing to do it. It sounds like they've had a conversation with him about, okay, you need help. We're here to provide the help. You've just got to communicate with us so that you can forge a new path here, Jeff, and get out of these doldrums that have been a part of his narrative for a year now.
Right, and it all goes hand in glove here, but I'm sort of with Rick Tocchet, where now when he gets asked about Elias and anything he does in a game that looks positive, you see the back check or, and Rick Tocchet's like, yeah, but like, I need to see more, right? Like, we can talk about it all we want. Matt, that was the San Jose Sharks. They're dead last. Like, that was a game begging for a star player to just take over and leave no doubt.
Well,
and
Detroit on Sunday too.
That might have been, but like Detroit came in like one of the hottest teams since Christmas. They got some guys that are going. This is the Sharks. They got nothing to play for. They've won 5 of their last 27 hockey games, and that might have been the low point in terms of individual performances from Elias Pettersson last night. Nothing, not a single shot on goal. At 5-on-5, the Canucks didn't generate a shot with him on the ice. The shots were 2-0 for the Sharks. He got taken off the first unit power play. Like, the coach had seen enough. That first power play of the hockey game, just standing there doing nothing, reluctant to shoot the puck, looked totally hesitant. It's getting tough to analyze night after night after night because you keep thinking there's got to be something that's going to spark him to get him going here. And all these games just start to look and feel the same. And here he is with, 1 goal in 11 games or something like that. And you're not going to score if you don't shoot the puck. And didn't have a shot last night.
Has he been made available since the JT Miller trade? Has he talked since the Miller trade?
He did the night of down in Dallas.
Right. But no local media was there, right? Or was someone from The Athletic there?
Nope. There was outside of the broadcasters. No. Then they came home, traveled on Saturday, played on Sunday. Yeah. Monday was a day off. Played on Tuesday.
He didn't talk post-game against Detroit, I guess?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
I mean, not that I have grand expectations in terms of what he will say, but
this comes back
I do think the question about Miller being traded should be posed to him at some point. And
I want to take every opportunity I can to make this point, that for the people that think it is nonstop, that the microphones and the cameras and the bright lights are in his face, and that's part of the issue.
Yeah. They'll leave him alone. Why is he under a microscope?
He hasn't spoken to the media. We get him once a week. Which, like, for a star player making $12 million, he basically does media once a week here. So that ain't it, is my point.
All eyes on Quinn Hughes tomorrow. Will he play? Won't he against the Toronto Maple Leafs? Dollywall says it's an oblique injury. Patrick Johnson mentioned yesterday he had trouble turning in one direction as he tested it out Tuesday. You were shooting that. Is that what? Because just to look at it flatly, it looked like he was moving pretty well.
I thought, like, given the fact that we hadn't seen him for a couple of days, I thought his mobility was decent, but he clearly wasn't 100%. Like, there was no doubt. So I can understand where, when Tocchet said he was pushing to play, Quinn believed that even at 70%, he could still be the best defenseman and help this hockey club, but they're taking the long-term approach. But this is 3 straight now. Hadn't skated on Wednesday, didn't skate. I don't know what happened on Thursday. He wasn't with the team. He may have taken some ice.
Tocchet said we'll see if he skates Thursday, so it almost sounded like he needed a recovery day.
Lacrosse in the building, so they were going to practice at UBC here on Friday. That got canceled.
Yes, strangely, actually.
And a 4 o'clock start, so there won't be a pregame skate, so it may be up until just before game time, before we know if Quinn Hughes is going to play.
Mm-hmm. Do you think if he misses tomorrow, he will miss the 4 Nations? We have an Alvin quote here.
I'm of the opinion now, and I can't remember. I want to give credit because somebody had the great idea that what if he goes to 4 Nations and doesn't play the first game for Team USA?
Right.
The second game is a week from tomorrow, the Canada game on the 15th.
Right.
I could see him taking that course of action, give himself another week. This is an opportunity to represent his country, to play with his brother. He's been looking forward to it. I don't see him bailing on this tournament.
Best and his first opportunity at senior best on best.
Right.
Alvin, yes.
So I don't see him pulling out entirely. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if he's going to be ready for the tournament opener.
Alvin, quote, Quinn is extremely professional. He knows his body and what he can do or not do, so I trust him a lot. We're supporting him in his position. You're going to want to hear what Mike Gillis says about this coming up because I asked him on both. When you're an agent and you've got a client who's going to international duty who may not be feeling great, what's the conversation? I also asked him when you're a club manager and you got a player going to international duty who's battling something, what's the conversation? Game tomorrow against the Leafs, the final one, as mentioned, before the 4 Nations break. It's a 4 p.m. start. Somebody tell Big Daddy Dave Pratt can lead the protest down at Rogers Arena, but the dirty little secret is there's a lot of people in and around the club and who cover the club that prefer the 4 p.m. starts. And there's also families that prefer it as well because, you get the kids home in a better hour.
But the dirtiest secret of all is that the Canucks are 17-2 in their last 19 home games against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
They don't lose here to the Leafs.
So maybe the Leafs should want to play the late game.
Some of them were late games, though. You remember there was so much pushback that we got a couple of, and of course they were here weeknights
7
as well.
straight here in Vancouver. That included the pandemic season where they played them a bunch of times. They won 7 straight against the Toronto Maple Leafs here in Vancouver.
And I would sure hope that the Canucks bring their professional best and finish off this portion of the calendar with a hearty effort in front of the home faithful tomorrow night because, let's face it, there's going to be a lot of the visiting team faithful in the building. There always is when the blue and white come to town. Maybe it's a good thing that this is the final game that, guys can't fixate on their vacations too readily because of that crest that's coming and because of the noise that's going to be in the building that, let's face it, is a little bit different than just about any other visiting team when they enter Rogers Arena. And then lastly, because I saw this earlier in the week, people wondering if JT Miller was going to address the city of Vancouver Canucks fans from his own personal channels, not just from out-of-market media interviews. And as many noted, it's his wife, Natalie, that has taken the lead hand on a lot of his social channels and the communication on behalf of the Miller family, and she did just that, penning a farewell yesterday. Thank you for every message. We are so grateful for the support and love, and we'll hold on to our time here really close to our hearts. And there were some photos attached there of the Miller children and how young they were when he first got here to Vancouver. And what turned out to be their final visit to Rogers Arena to cheer Daddy on in their jerseys. So
Now, you're right. We really haven't heard from JT. The Canucks do have to face the Rangers at Madison Square in March.
March 22nd, Big Red Circle.
So I would think in the lead up to that, some of this will resurface.
And who knows what we will have learned between now and March 22nd. We're a long way from there, Jeff. We're 6 weeks
That's true.
from there. A lot will have happened between now and then, including a National Hockey League trade deadline. Okay, let's get to our menu. It is brought to you by Greta, 50 US Cordova, and a week from tomorrow, for, Saturday, February 15th, we will be there for a watch party, Canada versus the United States. It's presented by Fountain Tire. Got some raffle prizes to be won, chance to party it up, cheer on the home country, and this is all in support of the Social Run Club YVR, our charitable partner. You can get your tickets at nationgear.ca. They're $10, or snag the VIP package, $40. Entry to the event, get a burger. The smash burger there is delicious. Get a beer, and get a game card to play at the famous arcade that encircles Greta. Those are $40, up to 6 people there. Doors at 4, puck drop at 5. It's a 19-plus event. Grab your tickets now, nationgear.ca. Bit of a different show today, not too dissimilar to Tuesday's show, where Farhan joined me for the opening block. Jeff was kind enough to come on in studio and join me for the opening block here. Got to have a foil to talk Canucks in the opening block. We got Mike Gillis and Arash Madani from Superbowl, Sportsnet's Arash Madani from Superbowl coming up. I have conducted those interviews solo because... well, Jeff's planning for a Mexican holiday. S-Pat's taking you to Mexico, huh? And you're going to meet our friends Karen Sermon, her husband Bobby. Carmen and I were there 2 years ago for their wedding. So
Yes, well, you're beating me to the airport, but yes, we're both headed in that direction, and then
Sunny.
separate. Yes, Yep,
sunny
we'll get away
climes
for a week.
Should also mention I'm going to be away Monday, so Blake Price is going to have the controls. Folks, we are off next Tuesday and Wednesday. There's just not a lot. Hey, look, if something happens, we'll break in with an emergency show, as we all know. Did 2 of those this past weekend. But no shows Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, with the NHL schedule shut down and the 4Nations not having yet taken place. So Monday, Thursday, Friday next week for Sekeres and Price. All right, time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. The segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. Proud partner of Sekeres and Price. I went with the 2-goal Canucks win last night, Jeff, thinking I could get an empty netter, so fell short of that. I am going to be awfully boring today. I just look at how fantastic that Kansas City defense is playing these days, and how talented that Philadelphia defense is. Everyone likes a shootout on Super Bowl Sunday, and I'll take it, but I'm going to bet against it under 45.5 points on Super Sunday.
I'm hoping Saquon Barkley has a big game. I like the pursuit of history, though, and I do think ultimately that the Chiefs will get the job done, but I am going to bet on Barkley to score the first touchdown of this football game. You can get him plus 350 if he's the first one into the end zone.
You think he's you got to figure he's going to get a lot of touches here. The Philadelphia Eagles are better off the more times he touches the football. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary on Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Thanks for this, Jeff. Mike Gillis coming up next. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Pacific Toyota Dealers. The 2024 Toyota BZ4X is the ideal Vancouver car, the ultimate commuting vehicle, full access to the HOV lanes, 100% electric. Plug it in at home overnight and never see a gas station. It's spacious, legroom, heated seats in the back, and it's packed with all the things you want in an SUV. The capacity to fit family, friends, pets, sports gear, can handle all the terrain, city to the slopes. With your digital key, you can run this car from your phone. And when you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives. And now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Take a test drive. Learn how easy an electric vehicle is. If you've got any questions, visit your nearest Pacific Toyota dealership today or visit shoptoyota.ca. Well, it was about 1 month ago, in advance of that record-setting PWHL game at Rogers Arena, we were surprised to see former Canucks GM and president Mike Gillis appear in our studio window here. Turns out Mike and his son Spencer were recording with Irf Gafar on the Down to Earth podcast, both being big supporters of women's hockey. Spencer is representing a number of the players in the PWHL, so we called him in for an on-the-fly interview. We were in the throes of the JT Miller-Elias Pettersson matter. Mike shared some thoughts, and so we thought we'd ask him back now that the matter has been resolved. He joins us from his home in Victoria. Good to see you. Good to hear your voice again, Mike. How are you?
Good, Matt. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, first off, quite a night for the PWHL. Crowd over 19,000 at Rogers, a record-setting crowd. What did you make of the experience? What do you think it says about our city and the evolution of the women's game?
You know, it was a great game. It was remarkable to see the demographic in the stands because there were I'd say at least half of the crowd were young girls, women under the age of 15 with their whole teams and proudly wearing their jerseys, and they were very loud and happy. And I think it bodes very well for hockey generally, but certainly for women's hockey.
We have wondered about a Vancouver franchise in the PWHL, and I know it's difficult because then suddenly it becomes quite expensive for travel. But what are your thoughts there? Do you see a day where Vancouver can participate in this league?
Absolutely. I see a day when there'll be 24 franchises. And if you look at the demographics around Canada in particular, the growth of girls hockey versus the decline in boys hockey is fairly prolific. And, I think hockey is such a great sport for multiple reasons for kids growing up that now you're seeing young women have the benefit of all of those features. And, our daughter Kate was a very good ice hockey player as well as field hockey. And we were involved in her experiences growing up, and it's just a happy environment, and I think a very welcoming one for young girls. And it's a great team sport. You learn a lot. They have a tremendous amount of fun, so I'm not shocked at all that it's the PWHL is doing as well as it is.
Yeah, Blake was at the game with his daughter and her team and just raved about the experience, the energy, the electricity in the arena that night. And Mike's, let's not sell Kate short here. She was the captain of Canada's women's field hockey team for a long, long period. Remember you referencing her at your very first press conference when you stepped into Rogers Arena. Speaking of, last Friday, a transformative day for the Canucks, Mike, the biggest single-day team makeover in decades. What are your thoughts regarding what the Canucks did in bringing the Miller-Pettersson rift to a closure, or at least for now?
I'm not very close to it, and there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that people are never made aware of in circumstances like this. And I think in general, I'm sure Jim had that deal done before it was announced. That's why he did the media piece to set the market for it. All in all, I think they came out of what was a very challenging situation with a job well done. I mean, whenever you can acquire a top four defenseman in this league and then get the player signed for a contract that appears to be fairly reasonable. I guess we'll see how well he plays, but I think that's good stuff. And especially in Vancouver, you can't have enough defensemen. You just can't. And if you want to perform at a higher level, you need to have the best defense you can possibly have.
Why in Vancouver can't have enough defensemen?
Just the travel and the injuries, and the wear and tear on defenders is, I think, from the studies we did, was more prevalent than a lot of other places, and that's why we focus so much on fatigue management, is try and keep guys healthier. But even then, when you get into the playoffs, if you don't have enough good defensemen, you're not going to go that far. It's that simple.
What do you make of the other pieces in the trade? Hedl and O'Connor.
I really don't know enough about them, Matt, to formulate an opinion, a valid one. I think they're probably solid players. They seem like depth players to me, but quality NHL depth players are valuable as well. And but I don't follow the Canucks closely enough to know enough about those two guys.
It became very public, as you mentioned, and partly, if not mostly, by the club's design. What's your assessment on how the Canucks managed the matter, and particularly that Rutherford interview in the Globe and Mail?
Well, I think that we had different players at the time and different relationships with those players. So we had what I would consider a very forward communication strategy with them. And when things were not happening the way high functioning organizations happen, they were happy to come to us and describe it. And we worked with them to fix problems. My opinion is that got somehow way out of hand for far too long. And I guess you can presume that people will work things out and hope they do, or you get involved. And like I said, I'm not close enough to the situation to suggest that someone did something incorrect or wrong, but to get into that position over such a significant period of time doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But they would have their reasons, and they need to answer the questions.
You mentioned to us last month that you would keep Pettersson. How would you handle him now, his struggles and the aftermath in terms of trying to get the player back on track?
Well, I think you need to really support him and surround him with the right people, both on and off the ice. And, they have kind of a younger, I mean, it's hard to describe what the team is, whether it's experienced or not experienced, younger, and with the Canucks, we were really fortunate. We spent a tremendous amount of time on leadership and leadership skills and what that means. And that is not something that comes naturally to people. It's a work in progress, and real life examples are very helpful in understanding your role as a leader. And there's been a lot of media reports. Like I said, I don't follow them very closely, if at all, but it seems to me like they've got a young captain and they've got some young, really star players, and they probably need some help in understanding how a leader operates in that environment, because it's a very challenging one.
Hedl, Pettersson, O'Connor have brought some energy and enthusiasm over the last few games. Rick Tocchet was talking about how you can get a total team reset where everybody sort of feels like they're starting from zero. When you change that much of a lineup in the season, that it brings an element to the team that freshens the room and the throes of the long 82-game NHL season. Did you ever have an experience like that when you were GM here? Maybe that deadline when Higgins and Lapierre came into the fold?
Yeah, we had that. We were very fortunate. We had a really good pro scouting staff, and they identified our needs in roster construction. And so even though those guys were kind of under the radar, they brought an element to the team that was exciting and different. really solid additions. You know, the one time where I thought that, and it wasn't through acquiring a player, it was just through how we behaved, is when we lost 9 home games in a row, which was in my first year. And it was remarkable how we managed to lose them, because we should have won probably 8 of them, but we managed to lose them. And our reset came in a meeting with the team where we said, look, we're 100% behind you guys. We believe in this team. We believe in the coaching staff. We know you're good. Let's just start having some fun and start looking at this a little differently. And I think the team went on to win 27 of the next 32 games or something after that. And, you know, sometimes it's just a solid showing of confidence in the team and the people that are operating it that can propel you and give you that fresh start. You know, like everyone was so nervous about losing all the games, and then, okay, we've lost them. There's nothing we can do about it. Let's think about it this way. And that team just went on a tear after that, and didn't look back. And some players really took it upon themselves to be better. And so that's the one time. And I think what the Canucks have done will add a fresh perspective. It will bring different kinds of skill sets to the game, and it might have the exact same effect where a guy like Pettersson will find another player to play with that they just click, and suddenly he gets right back into form.
Yeah. We had Max Lapierre on the show last year during the playoffs, and he said to us he looks back so fondly on his time here in Vancouver. I mean, he mentioned he had played for 2 teams, including his home province Montreal Canadiens earlier in that season, then off to Anaheim, was really struggling, got here and felt like he had a home because he had a role and he had opportunity. I look at Philip Hedl, Mike, who has been a bottom 6 center for the New York Rangers, playing behind some pretty good players, and you just watch the joy and the enthusiasm and the energy that he has out there. I know it's only been 3 games. You know, he's got a chance to play second line center here. He's got a chance to play on the power play here. He sees the opportunity before him, and it looks like it's infectious. Can it be infectious when a player senses and sees his opportunity within a club?
Absolutely. I think, players are extremely smart and experienced in what their role should be on a team and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And when you have roster construction that allows a player to really play to their strengths and have it appreciated, no matter what the role is, it lifts everybody, not just that player, but it's a clear indication that the team has it right when they put a player in the right role, in the right position. And everybody on the roster appreciates that. There's always some guys that might get displaced when you make trades like this. They might go from being a second line left winger to a third line left winger when you acquire somebody. But if you present the right opportunity for them, they're going to embrace it. And as long as they feel like they're valued and they feel like it's up to them to show people and to perform at a higher level, and they're in the right spot on your roster, most players respond very positively to that.
I want to pick your brain on this Quinn Hughes matter. He has an injury. He has missed the last few games. We'll see if he plays tomorrow night against Toronto. But, of course, he is a member of Team USA at the upcoming 4Nations face-off. Now, you've dealt with this uniquely from the standpoint of a player agent with guys who are ticketed for international play, and as a club president and GM with guys who are ticketed for international play. If you're Quinn Hughes' agent right now, what's the conversation with regards to participation in this tournament?
Well, it's going to start with his health, number one. And, every player wants to represent their country and play in these circumstances best on best. It's one of the few opportunities in your entire lifetime you get to do it. And so players are going to naturally feel really compelled to want to participate, no matter what is happening otherwise. And, I think as an agent, you've got to be the voice of reason. He's got a long career ahead of him. He is an exceptional player, as everyone knows. He's the captain of a team. Balancing those priorities is a really challenging thing, especially for young players, because they might not get this opportunity again. And it, even though it isn't the Olympics, or it isn't, a fully comprised tournament without obviously the Russian players involved, but it's still an opportunity to play as close to best on best as you can. And, as an agent, you just try and be the voice of reason and balance out what the long-term effects could be versus the short-term enjoyment of playing.
What about as a manager, Mike? You got an important player who's nicked and is going to put himself in the line of fire in playing these international games. What's the conversation if you're the manager with
You do
Quinn
everything
Hughes?
to dissuade him from playing.
Do you really? Because it is. You just mentioned it's sensitive. They're sensitive. They're compelled to play. They're going to want to play.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that in season tournaments like the Olympics, they raise these very concerns. Before I got to the Canucks, Sammy Salo got hurt in the Olympics, and a lot of team owners and a lot of managers are really concerned in these types of events that a player does get injured and misses the remainder of the season, and you miss the playoffs. And 8 months later, no one cares about the player not participating. They care about missing the playoffs, and you may lose your job over it. So there's there's some selfish reasons for a manager not to want a player who is at risk to play, but ultimately it's going to end up in the player's hands, and you just hope they balance everything appropriately. And even though you might not want them playing, the experience of playing is usually a really good one. And for Quinn Hughes, I would imagine he's going to be in a room with a lot of really experienced players and see how they operate and see how they prepare, and gain some real benefit from that.
Yeah. What did you see out of guys like Luongo, Kessler, and others after they had completed the 2010 Olympic tournament here in Vancouver?
I thought that they were far better prepared to handle the extreme pressure of playing in a Stanley Cup final after that experience. The eyes of the world were on them. It was in Canada. Clearly, the U.S. versus Canada was a huge event. And they had their issues with each other and different people building up to those games. But I think they came out of it with a profound sense of respect for everyone involved, and the experience elevated their play.
Not sure I've ever asked you this, but where were you for the golden goal?
I was here in Vancouver. I didn't go to the game, but we actually went on a brief family vacation at the start of the Olympics for a charity event that I had supported, and it was the only time we could go. So,
right.
It was, I didn't have any other opportunities to do it. So we did that, but I was back to watch it, and it was a pretty special game all around.
It sure was. Do you what do you think the buy-in will be on this 4Nations tournament from players?
Well, like I said, it's tough because of the geopolitical situation going on and the fact that you don't have the best of the best participating. That the intrigue and the ability to host more nations, I think, is it's not as good as it could be, but it is what it is. And I think it'll be exciting for the players. I think it'll be an opportunity for other guys to take a break and get healthy, and get their energy back. But any time you have a chance to play against the other top players in your particular sport, I think it's really meaningful. And I think it's an opportunity for young players for growth. I think it's an opportunity for older players almost to say goodbye in certain respects. And And I really like these tournaments for those reasons. I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of people to accomplish things that they might not get another chance to do.
And for NHL GMs, maybe they take their lead, an opportunity to get a little bit of R&R with the family, swing some sticks, put some lines in the water, catch some fish.
Perhaps you never know. There's always, it's tough to get away from hockey when you're in that role. So you're always compelled to watch it and see what's going on and see how your own players are doing and how they're responding and make sure they have the right support when they get back.
Yeah, I have no doubt all Canucks eyes will be on Quinn Hughes, Elias Pettersson in this tournament as it goes forward.
Yeah, and it's funny, Matt, you say that because Pettersson is going to have an opportunity here to almost have a reset in certain ways. And he'll have an opportunity to be not as prominent in his role, but still prominent enough. And he'll have really good players around him to observe and watch. And, I think for a player like him, this could be really beneficial.
Yep, we've mentioned that as well. A springboard out of the 4Nations for Elias Pettersson. Marvelous stuff, Mike. Thanks for the time. It was great catching up again here. All the best there on the island. We'll catch up down the road.
Thanks, Matt. You take care.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by the HSBC Sevens Vancouver, celebrating 10 years at BC Place. It is the longest running event of this size and scale in Vancouver. The best teams in the world under one roof, February 21st to 23rd. Grab your friends, your fancy dress, 12 women's teams, 15 men's teams, both Canadian sides. Take the pitch for 3 jam-packed days of rugby and partying. And this is one of the great parties in Vancouver. If you've never been, single-day tickets are on sale now. Friday tickets start at $50 for the fan that wants to cram everything into one day. Get the VIP next-level rugby experience. $130 a day gets you the best seats in the house, player access, private bar and lounge, and in-seat food and beverage service. Tickets on sale now at Van Sevens. You got to spell out sevens.com. Arash Madani covers Super Bowl for Sportsnet. He is in the Super City, Super Bowl 59, New Orleans, where the Kansas City Chiefs go for a historic third consecutive Super Bowl championship against the Philadelphia Eagles. Good to see you. Thank you for the time. Appreciate this.
Always good to be at a Super Bowl when the Bears aren't here, Mr.
Oh, I said to Rogerson, I said, he's going to make a crack about the Bears. It will either be on the front end or it will be on the back end of the interview. In fact, it may be on both ends of the interview. Thank you for that. Still waiting to see that first Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl ring.
Right.
What has stood out to you? You've covered a lot of these things, Arash. What has stood out to you this week?
Just how it feels like this is a coronation for the Kansas City dynasty rather than an actual football game where I think they should be the underdog coming into it. It's three-peat. Is Mahomes better than Brady, et cetera, et cetera. And it's almost as if the Philadelphia Eagles don't exist in this kind of narrative conversation about what this game is. Like, I kind of get it, I guess, because Kansas City just doesn't lose. Mahomes has 3 career playoff losses. But I don't know. I see Philly with the better offense, Philly with the more explosive team, Philly with the better roster.
Yeah. That was the case 2 years ago, though, as well. And Kansas City won. And that's the case, I don't want to say a lot, but that is the case frequently enough against Kansas City the last 2 years, and yet all they do is win. 17 straight one-score victories. So
it's wild. Like, the thing about it, Matt, they started the year 15-1, and you look at it and you're like, man, they could have been 11-5 instead of 15-1. The Raiders were the Raiders. Like, Vegas had that game won, and they blew it up. They needed a block field goal at the end. coin flip goes their way in OT against Tampa Bay on a Monday night, like all these things. And I'm saying to myself, well, the winner of Baltimore Buffalo is going to beat them. This is it. This is over. And it wasn't. And this is there are a few things that give me pause, obviously, but one of them is 18 straight playoff games. Kansas City has not allowed a 100-yard rusher. And now enter Saquon Barkley. So the rubber's got to meet the road here in this spot. And I really wonder how Spags is going to try and contain Saquon.
Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for Kansas City, having like a Belichickian-like run here with what he has dialed up and how effective it has been. So give me the route to victory for Philadelphia here then.
Route to victory for Philadelphia is Jalen Hurts playing mistake-free football and making throws. To me, when you look at what Kansas City is going to do, it's try and contain Saquon. Try and to do that, you're going to need your linebackers and probably an extra defensive back to come downhill. So what does that mean? It means probably a lot of man coverage in the perimeter with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. That can't continue a lot of the night, but it's probably going to need to. And the other is Dallas Goedert, where there's going to be a lot of real estate to work with in the middle of the field. To me, outside of Travis Kelce, there's no tight end in the game who's better at feeling and finding space better than Goddard. And he and Hurts have this chemistry. So if Jalen doesn't turn the ball over, if he's just willing to take what's there, which I think is going to be a lot of Goddard because of the attention on Saquon, he's going to take so many guys with him. And if on those deep balls in man coverage, he's able to find Devontae and AJ, to me, that's the key offensively for Philly to do it.
How much do you think Kansas City's experience will come into play?
In the fourth quarter. I don't think the first three quarters matters as much. There's a million stats out there, right? But this is the one that struck me. No huddle offense this season. Kansas City had 16 snaps in tempo the entire year. They haven't trailed. Yeah. They haven't had the need to be in no huddle. Now, Philly, obviously, that's just part of their DNA. They have 260 something. That's just what they do, middle of the second quarter in terms of how they go about their business. But there's something about Mahomes and Kelce especially, but also Andy Reid. He's got some stuff waiting that he hasn't shown yet. It was Corn Dog. It was Tom and Jerry the last 2 years. What is it? What snack or what cartoon is it going to be this year? He hasn't put on tape. Yeah. And in the fourth quarter, you think you're seeing what you think you see, but you're not. And I think that's where that's where it matters. And also just in terms of managing the lengthy game that is a Super Bowl. Super Bowl is 4+ hours with the long halftime and the heat.
Right.
Philly's going to be drained. How much can they make sure they have in their gas tank at the end? Because San Fran had nothing left at the end. Bosa was just on fumes at the end of the game last year.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Kansas City and what they haven't shown. Wouldn't it be amazing if a new staff, a new quarterback pulled a second Philly in the Super Bowl?
Right.
Maybe the Eagles are sitting on something they haven't shown as well. Andy Reid versus Nick Sirianni. I'm rooting for the Eagles, Arash, but I'm having a real problem putting my nickel down on Nick Sirianni versus Andy Reid. Philadelphia coaching staff. I mean, this was a guy who at midseason people were wondering about whether his job was on the line, whether he was temperamentally fit to be a head football coach.
Why would they think that? Because he was screaming at his own fans on the sidelines and losing his mind? I mean, the fact that Philly's here with Sirianni just defies logic.
Yeah.
They're 10-1 last season. They have a meltdown for the ages. Before the playoff game against Tampa last year, Hurts and Sirianni weren't even talking. Jalen Hurts picked up the phone, called Wink Martindale, the Giants defensive coordinator at the time, and said, hey, how'd you game plan against us? Like, Hurts had no confidence in his coaching staff. Then this year starts. They're 2-2 going into the bye. Bad loss. And Lane Johnson and some vets just knocked on Sirianni's door and sat down and said, this is what we need to start doing on offense. And I'll give Nick Sirianni this. He listened. He listened to his guys, and whatever they did from there, they won 10, 11 in a row, something like that. You know, the drama with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts passing, they were able to overcome that. So, look, this isn't chess versus checkers with Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni. It's chess and, like, snakes and ladders. Like, you're dealing with a guy who's just all over the map.
Right.
And Vic Fangio I think he's 0-8 against Patrick Mahomes all time. But I just have a lot of confidence in that Philly defense, man.
Yep. And rightfully so. Jalen Carter is an incredible player. The most direct path to the quarterback is inside, not outside, and that's where Carter lines up. So if he can have his way with the interior of that Kansas City offensive line, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are in a lot of trouble. It is very difficult to scheme against that. I imagine that Pacheco, the back, will be asked to pick up blitzes time and again and help protect in the middle of that defense. And then you get to the Philly secondary where they have some exceptional players. There are a couple of rookies, and you do wonder whether they're going to be able to keep their composure all the way through. Here's why I'm rooting for Philadelphia. I still want running game and defense to be a championship formula.
Sure.
And it hasn't for the better part of a decade in the NFL. I think you got to go back to Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos upsetting Carolina. Remember, that was a diminished Peyton Manning. That was a Broncos team led by its defense that got over.
On Miller MVP.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, we've sort of the learned behavior here over the last decade since that game, Arash, is just pick the best quarterback. They tend to win the Super Bowls. They tend to win the bigger games. I know the passing rules have been it's easier to pass now than it's ever been before. But what do you think? Do you think we have a referendum here on whether defense and running game can still be a championship formula in the NFL?
It wouldn't be running game, but the way the Bucks beat Kansas City and Mahomes, like they did it with defense. KC's offensive line was depleted.
They did.
Mahomes was under siege, running for his life.
But it's hard to say running game when it's Tom Brady, right? You had a guy who had won 6 Super Bowls to that point.
Sure.
So,
and then like the whole Rams Bengals game, like, you know, when, as our friend John Gibbons would say, when it was nut cutting time, Aaron Donald and the defense did it. You know, offense wasn't, but again, run game wasn't a big part of that either.
I want to completely eliminate that game from Super Bowl history. It was absolutely the worst 4 hours I've ever spent. It was just death watching that game. So,
well, don't forget about the Rams Patriots now. What was that, 13-9 or some nonsense like that?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let me ask you this. Seeking the first three-peat in Super Bowl history, of course, the Packers have won 3 in a row on 2 different occasions, including the first 2 Super Bowls and the last NFL championship. Would this be the best dynasty in NFL history if Kansas City wins Sunday?
Not yet. Not yet.
Are you a Pittsburgh Steel Curtain guy, or are you
New England?
Dallas 3-4, New England 3-4?
But I guess New England had 2 dynasties within a dynasty. Like, when did the New England dynasty start and stop? Like, there was that 10-year gap in between. So was there like a pause?
Yeah, I certainly view it as 2 separate dynasties. I know Belichick and Brady were the common bonds there, but 02, 04, 05, and then 15, 17, 19. Frankly, the 3 and 4 were more impressive to me. I think those were better teams than the 3. And of course, they lost the year they went undefeated.
So if we're talking about New England as two separate dynasties, then yes, this Kansas City run to me is by far the most impressive. Because in addition to the three-peat, they won in February of 2020. They got there in February of 2021. Like what's to me, of all the things that's gone on here, that I don't think we quite really grasp is that Patrick Mahomes is not 30 years old yet. And he is on the verge of not only doing something that nobody has ever done before with the three-peat, but that this could be his fourth ring before the age of 30. And we were able to interview Drew Brees today. And when I brought that up with Brees, he's like, I played the best football of my career between ages 38 and 41.
Yeah.
So you're like, wait a minute here. What is the runway left for Patrick Mahomes? Like at this stage, and look, if they win Sunday, it's not just Brady that's in his sights. Like it's Bill Russell. Like this is nuts. What we're watching here. So if he wins Sunday, the only comp for Mahomes is Brady. He's ahead of Montana. He's ahead of Bradshaw. He's ahead of everybody else.
Mm-hmm. And your Bill Russell comparison is fantastic. The greatest winner in the history of American sport, right? 11 NBA titles in 13 years, 2 college championships, and a Olympic gold medal. His championship percentage was over 500. Okay, so you like Philly here.
31 other teams to go up against, which Mahomes does.
Yeah, it's true. And honestly, when Brady lifted number 7, Arash, back in 2021, and of course, Mahomes already had one at that point, right? I didn't, for the life of me, think that anyone would approach that, let alone approach that in the subsequent 4 years. But here we are. Okay, you like Philly on Sunday? Give me a pick. Give me a score.
Like Philly, I like the better roster. I like the better defense. I like the better running game. I think that Philly wins 31-17.
Whoa! You think Philly blows them? That's a 2 touchdown?
So
really?
Like, I would take Philly. I would tease all these lines. Philly -7.5, -9.5, to get some great juice. Here's the only thing: if it's a close game, damn it! Like, how do you bet against Kansas City?
No, of course. Again, the only thing is he's won 17 in a row. The law of average. He's eventually going to get nipped at the line. Fantastic stuff, sir. Much appreciated. We will catch up next year when my mighty Bears are in the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah?
Look forward to that interview, Arash.
Yeah, so do I. We'll do the UFL relegation conversation. Yeah. Give my best to Coach.
Yeah, I sure will. Be well.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. Where? Why don't you take advantage of the Sekeres and Price exclusive rate? If you have your tickets to the big game, make it a full experience. Stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the S&P rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. You can text this show, 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. It all goes to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips. It's going to be great. Well, I sure hope Super Bowl 59 Sunday will be great. I got to say, I'm still recovering here from Arash Madani's pick of Philadelphia 31-7. Eagles by 2 tutties? I can't remember being of two minds on the game this late in Super Bowl week. I'm really struggling with this one. You know, I typically in a big football game look at quarterback, coach, line of scrimmage. And 2 of those 3 are massive advantages for Kansas City. That said, as I mentioned to Arash, I'm rooting Philadelphia here because I want running game and defense to be a championship formula. It's been on the way out for the better part of a decade, and I just find football in the NFL more interesting when you have different styles that can climb the mountaintop. But I'm having real trouble seeing Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts getting over on Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. There would have been a time in life where I would have felt absolutely great about picking Philadelphia in this game because of the defense and the line of scrimmage, which I think is superior. 17 straight wins in one-score games. That's got to come to an end at some point for Kansas City. And yet, as has been the narrative all year long with the Chiefs, they just seem to get the big call at the right moment now, don't they? And I'd feel better about picking Philadelphia if illness wasn't sweeping through the team, especially Jalen Carter. I just think that Kansas City defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo and his troops are so dialed in right now. And that in combination with a head coach like Andy Reid, a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, that's a tough trio to beat. I'm somebody who doubts Jalen Hurts as a downfield passer. The dual threat quarterback has never won a Super Bowl. And those Philly wide receivers, pedigreed as they may be, they were having real trouble getting open until the Washington NFC Championship game. Saquon Barkley is absolutely great. So love watching him play. Reminds me so much of LaDainian Tomlinson, his ability to make those cuts at full speed, elude guys. The athleticism there is off the charts. Just a joy to watch him play football. But those Kansas City linebackers and their veteran guys, they're seek and destroy types. Trent McDuffie, their corner, is just a superior player, as is Chris Jones, their future Hall of Fame defensive lineman. If Philly had a great edge rusher to pair with Jalen Carter and exploit those weak Kansas City tackles, I would feel pretty good. I'd be all over the Eagles, but they don't. And they have some youth in the secondary as well, and that's given me some pause because those guys are really good players, the two rookie corners, but they ain't never seen a quarterback or an arm like Patrick Mahomes. So I'm going Kansas City and the three-peat. Call it 24-17. Football north of the border, where the BC Lions have signed a couple of players. Canadian linebacker Adam O'Clair. He's a 28-year-old. He played 15 games for Saskatchewan last year and made 8 starts at weak side linebacker. Previously, he's a pedigreed player. A first-round pick of the Ottawa Red Blacks. He played a lot there, too. We thought with the retirement of Bo Lacombo and the trade of Ryder Varga that BC was looking to go American at linebacker, and I still think that'll be the case. But with Ben Laddick in the middle, Adam O'Clair on the outside, they have some options there in terms of starting a Canadian. They've also signed a running back kick returner by the name of Jason Huntley, a veteran of 6 NFL games with the Philadelphia Eagles. GM Ryan Rigmaiden called him the epitome of a playmaker, and you watch his highlight film, yeah, he's fantastic in space, makes people miss, has some speed, so a potential weapon there for Nathan Rourke out of the backfield. And as a kick returner, and God knows the BC Lions need more explosiveness in their kick return game. Counting down to 4Nations here, and our friends at the Daily Face-Off Live are hitting the road. They're going to be on location from the 4Nations from February 10th to 20th. Live shows every weekday, breaking down the biggest stories, the key matchups, all the action as it unfolds. Don't miss a second. Subscribe to the Daily Face-Off YouTube channel. Follow on all social platforms to stay locked in. They'll be bringing you the insider analysis, on-the-ground coverage. International Hockey, Best on Best. Daily Face-Off Live, February 10th to the 20th. Poll question results from the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question on Thursday. We asked you, which defenseman made more sense for the Vancouver Canucks? Marcus Pettersson and his extension, or Nikita Zadorov in the deal that he signed ultimately with the Boston Bruins? And Mike and I are both just astounded by the results here, because typically when you get a poll question that is so lopsided, you don't have it generate 2,600 votes, but people were all over this from the jump, and they were all over Marcus Pettersson. He got just shy of 88% of the vote. Skridler, recency bias and such, and Zadorov's playoff snarl was a sight to behold, but MPD is a better defenseman and will do more for overall team success than Zadorov, especially over the term of the contract. Rob, Pettersson is the better, more consistent defenseman. Zadorov potentially flashier, though, but considering the cap was announced to be going up before MPD signed and the contracts are very similar, Pettersson by far makes the most sense. Here's the case for Zadorov, or at least one of them. Steve still should have put more of a priority on Zadorov. He brought more team toughness and heart. That's what's lacking today. And then Core, he middled it. Regular season, Marcus Pettersson. Playoffs, Nikita Zadorov. All right, errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond, and we have several of them. Jeff Merrick aired Carson Soucy is from Irma, Alberta, not from Sherwood Park. We shortchanged Rob Williams. He's been in the media game now 12 years, not 10. Patrick Johnson and I did that breakdown of even strength goals and shots being down this season. This is context. One of the reasons why shots are down is because you have more accurate tracking data. You see this all the time now as if you're following along live stats in the NHL. You know, the Canucks will be up to 10 shots, and then all of a sudden here comes the intermission, and they're down to 8 shots. Well, they've reviewed all those shots and determined they weren't going to be on goal. So teams are losing shots in the audits, which accounts for a suppression. It's 5 shots per game in even strength suppression this year. And then lastly, I was out on a limb picking Zadorov on yesterday's poll, and certain audience members handed it to me. We read the tweet from Jay Emo saying, "Love the show, Matt, but you can't remember the last time you were this, one of your takes was this far off." And there was a Twitter thread, and I'll spare you all of that. But at one point, I thought Jay was Clay Emo. You know Canucks Clay. I thought he was his son. It's his brother. Clay's got a son named Jacob, but his brother is Jay. Just so youthful looking. And, you know, Clay's so fertile, I thought he's all these children. Anyways, my apologies in regards to the Emo family, who have been big supporters of this show for a long time. Thank you to all of you. And thank you for joining this program and connecting with us. I'm away on Monday. Blake will be at the controls. No shows next Tuesday and Wednesday during this international break, and then we'll be back later in the week. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time, weekdays, and of course, support the community sponsors you hear us telling you about. Enjoy the Super Bowl and keep it local.